Thank you, Hans, very much. I will make myself a presenter now in order to show, first of all, the questions that we have received for the moment, and then to also show an overview of the outputs of the QUALICHeCK project. So give me just a moment. Okay, I suggest to keep everybody unmuted for the questions, because I think they are, well, quite general actually. They have been asked in order, but I think they are relevant for most. So, starting from the first, as per your findings, it appears that some issues have been solved in certain construction disciplines or countries. Is there some kind of sharing of best practices between disciplines and countries which could help such solutions expand? I think perhaps for Susanne. Susanne, could you attend here?
I think I would refer to the build-up skills activities. I think build-up skills is a very good platform where, let's say, sharing of experiences between countries is possible, and also, you know, within countries. So it comprises the disciplines of construction works. I think this is the platform which, let's say, facilitates that.
Okay, a very good example. Perhaps somebody else could suggest an example.
If I can, short give an example. What we found is we have some transfer of information maybe between the countries, and we found the description of work specification in Sweden and Germany, and we find the cavity walls framework also applied in Belgium, and we also have heard that the contractor declaration now is used in Austria, in Salzburg. Yeah, so you can see you have to publish it and you have to show the advantage of the system, and then after a time it may apply also on other countries.
I also would like to complete here or comment. So it's clear that a project of QUALICHeCK has as one of the major aims to just stimulate this exchange of information, because it's often by hearing from other countries what works and what doesn't work, which may, let's say, help you in getting forward. And also, I think, important to get the societal support. I take, for example, what Hans Erhorn is referring to, this cavity framework, which started in the UK, which has been there used for many years. If I look now to the Belgian context, one of the ways, I think, which helped also to convince the stakeholders that a similar approach, although not identical, but a similar approach would make sense in Belgium, was the experience gained in the UK. And we have seen quite a number of these examples, let's say, in QUALICHeCK, that on the one hand, good examples helps others to find their own way. Sometimes, of course, the less successful examples avoid that other countries make the same error. However, I think there is always a quite important national dimension in the story, so it's often not possible to just copy and paste. So you should take into account, I would say, your national local conditions, also at the view of the stakeholders. But I think that getting experiences from other countries will help a lot, I think, in your own discussion. If I look, for example, to the EPC, so as Susanne showed, collecting information on the status of the ground from one country or from a number of countries, showing that the situation is not always as good as you expect. I would say indirectly also, I think, suggest to other countries that probably also in their own country there might be problems in practice. So we really think that information exchange is very important, and we see in practice that it helps to get forward. QUALICHeCK has their one the key objective, but also there have been other platforms active in QUALICHeCK, like, for example, the European Solar Shading Organization, or TIDE, in relation to air tightness, or Venticool. But we really believe that information exchange on country experiences can really stimulate a quicker and more effective market uptake of approaches.
Very good, thank you. Next question. Is the construction industry still too country-centered, so that there is not much incentives for suppliers and technicians to become EU-wide compliant? assume this could be both for data and for construction and for the quality of work.
I can reply to that. I think it is, but it's for me not so much a question of country centered. I would say it is centered on the specifications around the project. If you have, let's say, a very demanding, let's say, client, I think a contractor, of course, will be more careful. Here we speak typically of boundary conditions at national level. For example, if you have a quality framework, as mentioned before, on cavity insulation, and there is a third-party control, it is clear that that I would say the contractors or the companies involved will pay more attention than if there is not a third-party control. So I think it's quite normal that the boundary conditions, whether it's technical specifications, whether it's quality frameworks, clearly to a certain extent determine how a contractor is working. Also because I think there is no absolute definition of quality. So you cannot say there is a unique universal definition. It always has to be the result of a certain set of specifications. But it's clear today that I think the national context in many countries is still very determining. And that's clear for quality of the works, but also for EPC compliance. If you have a country where there is a quite strict, let's say, compliance check and enforcement, it's clear that the market actors will more carefully look, is my project compliant?
Okay. Would somebody else want to add something?
No, that was clear, described from Peter.
Okay, then let's move to the next question. Does third-party control introduce a significant additional cost to products, perhaps making them less attractive?
Yeah, may I start? Our experience, when you remember the start sheet what I presented, we have 10% costs that are related to construction defects. So this, if you spend this 10% into a better procedure at the realization, then I think that that will be much cheaper. So therefore, I'm not sure if you really can take this issue as a negative issue. And our experience in the KfW scheme is that the additional costs are, this is in the framework of some €1,000 during the whole process of the building. And at the end, you have really ensure that your energy performance is in the area you expected and calculated before. So for me, it's not an argument about additional costs.
Maybe I can add something. Of course, in the case of products, third-party control clearly has a cost, and it can be seen, and it is an additional cost compared to a situation without a third-party control. But there are cases where third-party control also adds value to the product or to the product data, to the product characteristics that's published. Because the product data is then published after third-party control with more confidence for the customer and less risks for the manufacturer to be considered as providing a non-compliant data. Of course, an equilibrium must be found between additional costs linked to third-party control and the added value brought to product data thanks to a third-party control.
I also would like to add something there. So I believe that in quite some cases, the extra cost due to third-party control can be a major barrier if there is no strong specification from the side of the client. And I can give a few examples. Take, for example, residential ventilation systems. We have seen, for example, from the workshop we organized in Lund in March 2015, of which you can find all the information on the QUALICHeCK website. So we have found that in quite some countries there are substantial problems with ventilation systems, too noisy, not correct airflow rates, no maintenance, and so on. So clearly there is, I think, in many cases a problem. By setting up a third-party framework, and I think Sweden has had a very long tradition with it, you can show that you can indeed come to much better performances. But there is no doubt for the installer as well in terms of purchase of components, efforts to do the work correctly, to do some commissioning, it requires an effort. And so it's clear that if one installer just put it in very poorly with low components, he will be cheaper than the one who does it and look to acoustics and so on, correct airflow rate, so there is an extra cost. And so if you have a client in front of you who doesn't bother, then clearly for the one who wants to deliver good quality, he will be more expensive. And therefore, I said in my introduction, the aspect to be able to deliver good quality is very important. So or you must have, I would say, very strongly motivated building owners with the knowledge to know how to judge if the quality is good, or you need a third-party system, typically I would say by government, like for example was for many years in Sweden, what we also now have in Belgium, what we see in France, where indeed there are clear specifications set what has to be achieved, where there is a random third-party control. And this clearly introduces a cost, but I think is a very important aspect of a level playing field. And also, if you look more to the quality, we see in quite some studies that because the system is very noisy, people don't use the ventilation system. So you can say that these systems might be cheaper than systems developed with a third-party control, but at the end, the system does not work. And I think it's like with the washing machine example in the beginning, the first purpose of a ventilation system is to deliver good air quality. And of course, without noise as well. So I think cost can indeed be a problem, but I think if you make a good, as François said, a good cost-benefit analysis, and if you judge what the state is on the ground without an appropriate control framework, I think there are quite a number of cases where a well-thought and optimized third-party control can be very beneficial.
Okay, very well. And a final question, how can detailed specifications be kept up to date while materials and technologies constantly change?
I can react on it if nobody else wants to react. I think it partly has to do that you should try to speak in performance-based approaches. So not describing solutions, but trying to be more on the performance level. And if that's done with sufficient, I would say, fine-tuning, I think then you are in principle quite robust with respect to new, I would say, technologies and systems. For example, think of airflow rates for a residential ventilation system. If you specify what airflow rates has to be achieved and how to assess it and what are the acoustical performance and so on, I think that whatever system you have, to a certain extent, of course, you can, I would say, integrate it. So I think that the problem is essentially when you are too prescriptive in your specifications, then you may be a barrier to innovation. In practice, we have also to be realistic. In quite some cases, you have to be, I would say, quite prescriptive in the specifications. And then it's very important that you have, let's say, a framework for assessing innovative systems that exists in a number of countries. If you think of the EPC assessment, that has also been mentioned in various activities in QUALICHeCK, for example, in the Netherlands, France, Belgium, where if your technology is not covered by the basic EPC assessment method, that there is a road to, let's say, take into account innovative technologies. And in principle, if you have a robust, let's say, third-party control system for quality of the works aspects, also there you should, let's say, think in advance, how can I integrate innovative systems, and also how can I avoid to be a barrier for innovation.
Yeah, and the experience from AMA and the German Leistungsbuch is you have to install a system. If you imply that kind of specification system in your country, then you have to make sure that you keep that up to date. And also it's important that you have a board on different integral disciplines in verifying this specification, that you make sure that everyone agreed on the process what you write in your specification system.